This
recording.
conference will now be recorded.
Okay, great.
Now we're recording. I have to repeat again, so I see.
Perfect.
Okay, so without further ado, let's jump to the hottest topic we had. Yeah, so let's do it monthly, then UTC 16 on Thursdays, and we can adjust maybe in delegate discussion if there will be some adjustments needed. Okay, so okay, so that was the feedback on the proof of double forging. So essentially, yeah, so we all thought it was a good idea. Maybe it was not communicated clear enough. So that's why some different questions came out of it, and essentially maybe some hot discussions. And we're gonna leave it at that. But
before we start discussing that, can I point something out?
Sure.
So I think what happened is that the AIPs that you guys submitted to the GitHub, they were not properly finished for a long time, and then suddenly a blog post came out claiming that this will solve all the issues, and I think that kind of caught everyone off guard, and they became kind of defensive. So
yeah, I agree. I mean, as I said, it's always about communication. That's why the blog post was essentially two-folded. One purpose of the blog post was to stress out the meetup we had in Utrecht, and we wanted to prevent double forging, not accidental double forging, but double forging via attack. And some of the things were actually not clearly stated in the blog post because it's a lot to cover, and one image and a few chronology steps that you also see on the slides are not enough to explain what we envisioned and how we envisioned it. But essentially, it was also good to see your feedback and how you understood it. But everybody stopped at that step 6 and step 7, where we were discussing how the fork recovery will work and how will we actually receive the double forge blocked blocks after it. So I think also we got a video from Jaronik discussing this in today's Reddit post. But the idea is not to trigger fork recovery when double forging happens, but the nodes wait for the double forging block. Okay, and only then we still are not clear, or we wanted to put that into discussion, but essentially it never came to it. What happens after you received, so the node did not fork yet, and then the proof of double forgery comes from the next delegate that actually validated, slashed, or whatever proof that the guy before you double forged. And only then we can decide how the fork recovery will work. And maybe this is where the open question, or like before nodes, now when a node receives a double forge block, usually we roll back a few blocks, yeah, and then start again, and we see how lucky we are. And now we would roll back only when we would receive the PODF block, okay? That was essentially the idea. And these were the two options we wanted to discuss open in the community, but we never came further to this. Fix, maybe you can add some comments, or Joshua on this side, so we make it clear, and then we can discuss.
Yes, actually, I just wanted. So hello everybody. I just wanted to maybe the slide before. Kristjan. So when we discussed this proposal back a few months ago with Kristjan and Joshua, basically we were trying to tackle the issue with a consensus proof of stake or delegate proof of stake consensus. It means that it does not provide any idea on how to solve when the fork happens. When the fork happens, we need to find a strategy. We have already a strategy which is not optimal, but we can find better. to be able to stick to a common chain. It does not either provide a solution for accidental double forging, in the sense that we don't now the code is developed in such a way that it could happen again that forger or several forgers for the same delegate are providing, because they have a different look of on the same time, a different vision of the network, they could sign two different blocks at the same time. It does not provide the solution against that. However, it does try to provide a solution on the consensus, on the fact that there is no incentive not to perform well, in the sense that if you are a delegate, if you wish, you could attack the network and take it down. That's it. It's not because they're accidental, and this is a common problem in all proof of stake. We have, I mean, there was a discussion about Tendermint. Tendermint, they have the same issue. They call it double signing. So they have a different way of agreeing with using PBFT, whatever. But the double signing is still something happening in any proof of stake. If you see as well the slashing solution in Casper that has been given up, but by Vitalik Buterin, he has two proof of stake issues. It divides in two. The simplest one is when the fork happens. So when you have two blocks that are created by the same delegate or by the same forger, then it's the easiest solution, because then you catch the two blocks, you put it in the blockchain, and everybody can agree that somebody has double forged and tried accidentally or intentionally to create a new blockchain, a new chain, a fork. And the other one is a long-range attack. Is that what is long-range attack basically is equivalent to double forging, but not broadcasting the other chain, but trying to build his own chain. And then after, when the one chain is dominant, you could try to switch the new blockchain you have forged on your side. That's the point. We are on a consensus level. Then after, so on consensus level, and what it means on consensus level is to find a way to find an incitative to behave well. And the way to incitate to behave well is rewarding. And in proof of stake, the idea is a slashing solution, or to punish the guys that has been caught in building an alternative blockchain. And
out of the community discussion, the main consensus was that kind of the forking resolution is the problem, no?
Sorry, again?
In the Slack discussion of the delegates and the community, the main consensus was that the main problem we have now is not that someone maliciously is forging, but that we cannot resolve the fork.
Yeah, that's another thing. This proof of double forging is trying to fix a problem of consensus, the consensus. Then after, when you want to fix a fork, the thing is that anyway, in proof of stake, you cannot incitate positively not to fork. So you can only try to make sure that if this is happen, it will be punished. So anyway, it will happen. The way to solve proof of stake double forging is basically trying to punish. So and when you punish, anyways, it happens after a fork. So the thing is that it should be punished enough so people don't want to go into double forging by attacking. Then after, if you want to solve the issue of preventing accidental double forging, this is something else. Actually, we have a slide to propose this. Maybe we can go directly. But if you go into other projects, they are trying to, for instance, Tendermint, Cosmos, Delegates have come up with what they call KMS, so Key Management System, to be able to have a special sandboxed management system. I think we can go on the last slide or something like that, Kristjan. Yeah, that one. So basically, there are links and everything. Basically, you sandbox the signing utility into one single process. You can even have a hardware device doing the signature, and basically this KMS is counting on the blockchain what is the slot of the block is being signed, and if it gets 2 blocks within the same slot, it just raises an error for the second block and preventing a double forging. But it raises other issues, but that's basically what some other projects have come up as well. I'm not sure if I answer your question. And okay, last question. Okay, a fork happened. What can we do? The problem is that the only way we can do is a convention. Both blocks are equally valuable. This is proof of stake, you know. It doesn't, or delegate proof of stake, it doesn't cost nothing to have this block or this block. So if you push this block first or this one, anyone can accept this. There is no way to differentiate. So the only thing is maybe convention. So we have some kind of convention in ARK, which is not really is that we take the smallest ID because
I think, did he lose connection? I can't hear.
Fix.
Yeah, I can't hear him anymore.
I can't hear you. Fixed with no sound. I can't hear you.
Fix voice.
Ah.
Okay, now it's better.
Yeah,
now we can hear.
Maybe I should move.
Now we lost like half a minute. So
okay.
Remember what you said?
So KMS, it's okay. You got it for KMS, key management system.
The idea, yes, it was put out. Yeah.
Okay, this one is. I mean, Tendermint has done some. I mean, one of the delegates in Tendermint called Certus1 has come up with a lot of things, a lot of food for thought for that. I think we can have a lot of things. It's okay now, microphone?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. Maybe I can switch this video because maybe I don't have. Okay. Anyway,
it's lagging.
Okay, the thing is that proof of double forging can solve the fork issue at the point that okay, 2 blocks, and then after the network is just fighting to find the right direction. At some point, the 2 blocks are flying around. One of the delegates can take those 2 blocks and include it to his 1 block, the new block, and broadcast it. So that's proof of double forging. As soon as everybody received it, they know that now, if they see still an issue to synchronize, basically to be able to solve the fork, they know that they have to discard these 2 blocks because it's a double forging issue. Because sometimes you can't make it properly. You can't sync peers because some have only 1 block, some other the other block, and and they don't understand and forging on the other. If everybody at some point receives the fact that there are 2 blocks that are forking the issues, then after we can decide more easily. It's not as easy as I just said because there is a bit complex, but anyway, everybody agrees that the fork is based on these 2 blocks, at least. Yeah. I don't know if you have questions. I mean, I guess you have questions anyway.
How do you propose the delegate select which one block is the valid one and which one is not?
There is no. They are both. If they are double forging, the best. Okay, this is another discussion. Okay, I see what you mean. Okay, normally both blocks are discarded. However, it could happen that, for instance, that the chain is completely sync, and the block, the double sign block, is in the past. You know, it's like 2 years ago. Somebody is pushing and say, "Oh yeah, look, I have a double forge block. Let's rebuild from 2 years ago to rebuild the blockchain." So we can't do that, obviously. So we cannot discard. So there is a limitation in the punishment, in the punishing session or in the rollback session, where we don't roll back as soon as it's older. The other reason we can't roll back is that we could find a way to attack to make double spends. Let's say I'm a delegate and I want to double spend on Bittrex. So I just forge a block, I forge another block, and I just keep it. And then after I send my tokens to Bittrex, and then after when Bittrex has accepted the tokens, I'm selling it. I'm selling them for BTCs, and then I just broadcast 2 blocks and say, "Hey, look, I have double forge." So all the networks say, "Oh yeah, we have to roll back again," and then after you can double spend what you have sent to Bittrex. So we need to limit it to 51 blocks somehow, or something like that, to be sure that the blockchain anyway won't roll back before some kind of hates. That's the point.
Yeah, so that's the idea of a rolling checkpoint. Yeah, so I also discussed this exactly. In the AIP 27. Yeah.
Exactly what you wrote in your AIP. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So what would happen if I would scale up an attack? Say I'm not going to double forge, but I'm going to 5,000 forge. So I have 5,000 blocks from the same delegates to put it into the extreme. How would that be managed? And
yes,
how big would it go before the network would crash on detecting all these double blocks?
Okay. Okay. The point is not discarding the block. Is discarding punishing the public key doing the blocks. So if you have 5,000 blocks different, which is legit, you need only 2, and with the 2, the network agrees to prevent this forger to forge for an amount of time. So it's not the blocks, basically, it's a public key. We could imagine that if you put 5 different blocks, the punishment could be higher, because it would be an obvious attack to try to push 5 different blocks. But I've not thought about that, actually. That's a good question.
Okay, so what it appears to me is that initially, when the blog post was written, it didn't mention anything about the fork resolution, but it appears to me that you want to use it in addition with fork resolution, some kind of fork resolution protocol, yeah? And that could be maybe follow the longest chain or something, yeah? Yeah,
actually the resolution is, it's more difficult when the fork happens, because it could fork for other reason. But the other reason is that not everybody agrees on the same state of the last block and forging from an ancestor. But basically, it's difficult to find the right convention. Why is it difficult? Because we need to find a consensus way to agree on a fork. I don't know if this is sensible. And the thing is that when you have a fork, you don't know really what the fork is. I mean, not everybody agrees on what the fork is. Is it a fork because a block forging to an ancestor? Is it a fork because it's double forging? Is it a fork for whatever else? Actually, there are both reasons. Not everybody is difficult to agree on this. So as soon as we find a process which is deterministic deterministically a way to find so everybody could agree on the fork reason, and then we solve the fork. This is the thing. So right now it's heuristically we try to just
we talk a lot about fork resolution. Yeah, and one of the ideas was to because essentially when the double forging is detected pretty fast, if you look at the real estate on the mainnet, and the block propagation, the way it is done now is we send block to all the peers. So most of them, if it's accidental, we're going to detect it immediately. If it's attack, it depends what kind of attack is it, but the double forging will be detected pretty fast. Now, one idea how to do the fork resolution, because the proof of double forging is actually that deterministic point that puts us on the same height. So actually all nodes could decide that they roll back to the double forging height and actually then move from there. So that would be like the optimum solution, which actually works. The issue, the door we open is like we're opening maybe some kind of time span in a 5 to 10 or some kind of blocks, which could cause double spending. So that's the only issue I see with this approach. But essentially, if we detect double forging, we put it into the propagated block, so by a next forger, then you know at what height this happened, and you also know how much back do you want to resolve. So then, as it's shown on this slide, you have two options. Now, one option is to roll back and dismiss the double forger completely, and another option would be just to accept one of the double forged blocks, which could be just a rule, take the lower ID or higher ID, doesn't matter. So what do you think about this, essentially? So this is something that was never discussed further.
Yeah, the thing is that the point is to find the solution which is not pushing the delegate. I mean, sorry, which is not which is not an incitative for delegates to trigger a rollback. The thing that we don't want is that somebody is able to trigger a rollback. So so the best, I mean, in my view, in what I think is that if the block is already accepted in the past, you don't roll back. I mean, there is no point to trigger a rebuild when it's going quite well. That's the point. However, if this is if the network is forking and the thing is not done, if this block, this double forging block, or one of these double forging block is within the reach of, I don't know, 51 blocks or whatever, the max, some kind of maximum, we decide to roll back to this block and to prevent this block from being in the blockchain. Is this sensible? The thing is that we need to limit the capacity to roll back. Mm-hmm. That's it.
These are the checkpoints here. Questions, discussions?
And the thing that, yeah, the thing is that most of the time, okay, I'm not sure anything. Well, actually, the thing is that we decide, I see one delegate, how many confirmation would you be needed to prevent double spend? We decide. The thing is that right now in Bittrex, we say that 51 confirmation is enough. Mm-hmm. If we decide, for instance, we can roll back up to 200, then we need to tell to all exchanges that they need to wait for 200 confirmation before validating a transaction to prevent from double spend.
True.
Does everyone feel that's an appropriate amount of time? It seems like a long time to wait for a transaction to go through.
Yeah, I see your point. True. I mean, that's
sorry.
Yeah, well, the comment was that seems to wait for the end user. That would be a long time to wait for his withdrawal or something out of an exchange. So yeah, so it's.
I agree. We can click on 51.
my perspective on that is that if I have to wait for 200 confirmations, I would start considering other blockchain options.
Yeah. Okay. It's quite a long time.
So that though. So for example, how the Bitcoin Cash chain does it? They have something called first seen, first served. So basically, even if they are putting the transaction back in the mempool, they only serve the ones that were received first. So in that case, even if you roll back the chain, your the transaction that was previously accepted is still going to be the one that is accepted. So there's no point. There's no chance of getting double spent for a merchant or for a.
But isn't that just a local rule? I don't think that's a consensus rule for cash.
It is a local rule, but if you have a network that is decentralized enough, then it doesn't matter. Then it works.
Well, the thing is, the rule of the exchange. They can try to smartly detect double spend, but imagine that if you make double spend, you accept the previous transaction. Okay, first transaction accepted by an exchange. Then after there is a rollback and a new transaction. The thing is that it's another transaction. It's not the same transaction being put back. And when you send a transaction, what the exchange sees is that, oh, I have a new transaction. And basically this is possible because there was an account that was filled with a token. So it's okay. And I am accepting the transaction. So it's a bit difficult. They need to keep track, for instance, of history, maybe, or these kind of things. But this approach is more an approach for the end user or the third part to be sure that there have not been a double spend through a rollback or whatever.
I don't see any realistic way of preventing this type of attack on an accounts-based system. With UTXOs, obviously you could prove that someone tried to double spend, but this is the same issue that I think most chains have. That's why I think a lot of chains nowadays use what Tendermint uses specifically for this very reason, because it seems to kill a lot of these problems at the same time. But outside of that, I've done a lot of research, and I just couldn't find a good way to sort of consolidate and fix all these issues on a chain that suffers from the nothing at stake problem.
Yes, actually, the nothing at stake it's still complex. It's more complex to perform long-range attack on DPoS, but it's far from impossible because it's easier because we know the keys or we agree on some keys, which is not the case on proof of stake, where basically the keys could be whatever. There is no election, but still, it's still problematic. Now the thing is that you have long-range attack and Sybil attack. So at some point we need to find a way to combine technique. So basically the nodes could find as well. So it's a Sybil attack and somehow some kind of new blockchain. What does it mean, new blockchain? Is that basically you have to rebuild or roll back quite a lot, and like clients as well. That's a problematic. Is that like clients, they don't have a blockchain, so you know if they think whatever nodes, they could have a different view and they don't know what is the truth. But basically, with full nodes and some kind of prevention of Sybil attack, for instance. On Bitcoin, you can still perform a Sybil attack. That's why they have made some kind of IP range prevention to prevent from IP spoofing. I mean, having lots of IPs trying to push another view of the blockchain.
Right,
and prevent.
But the thing is, on Bitcoin, Sybil attacks can't assist you in performing other attacks in order to push a new blockchain. Yes. Any local node there can verify that it's not the real chain. That's a lot harder to do on DPoS and POS systems.
Yes, but the thing is that we can.
I have a quick question about the nothing at stake. In this system, aren't the voters the stake? And so if the algorithm can quickly identify a double forge, which initiates an issue, wouldn't a logical course of action to be that delegates should no longer forge for a predefined time, or jail, if you will? And if they're acting badly and they are identified to not be able to forge, they will lose voters.
The problem is when you can rewrite the chain, you have to decide on the succeeding chain before you can actually punish anybody. And if you can't do that, then you can't really implement a proper solution to punish malicious actors.
Yeah, but also Erwin mentioned in the chat, I mean, double forging is detected really fast, so we are talking a few blocks of difference anyway, so I don't see double forging being detected 50 or something blocks later. I mean, just don't see it with the current block propagation.
Yes.
That's if it happens accidentally, yeah.
Yes. Accidental double forging is detected relatively fast. If you want to perform an attack with double forging, it's likely more difficult because you can try to partition and identify which node you send one block and which node, which likely more difficult to identify.
Yeah, but also very difficult to do because essentially the block is signed. You know who is allowed to forge in which slot. If someone's picking the slot from the previous time, he would have to be actually a malicious delegate. But then again, he would be double forging in real time, so we would pick him up.
But to answer the question of R1, I think 51 is a good the maximum rollback of 51 in case of double forging or whatever is a good solution, or is a good things. So we stick to with 51 confirmation.
Okay, voice, we lost you again. Fix.
I was just saying that it's okay.
Yeah.
I was just saying that 51. Obviously, this 51 or 200 or whatever rollback checkpoint is heuristic, but I think 51 is already a good number for rollback solution, for maximum rollback. Sorry.
Okay, but anyway, out of these PODF discussions, I think something good came up essentially. So the Tendermint here and there and left and right. I also personally like a few ideas from them, but maybe I see it as a combination of the current logic we have and maybe add the three-step process in between. So maybe we can discuss this a bit more because I know Moon and some other delegates also like the idea, have some of this stuff. We also did some reading and discussion inside of the team, and there was a lot of discussion in the public Slack. But essentially, so we could keep the round planning, we could keep the vote weight, so we would still know which delegate is allowed to forge at which time slot, and then using the three-step process in between, when a delegate would actually still forge, but he would announce the block and get the signatures back. So this is the part I really like, and I think most of you agree. So the question is, if I don't get back 2/3 of the signatures, yeah, it means that I'm gonna miss my block. So essentially, if I will be double forging, the nodes can have the logic on the consensus rule. They lock in on the first block they receive, and they sign this block, but they don't sign the next block or the double forge block they receive back. So essentially, a double forger will never get 2/3 plus one of the signatures in return, so he could move the chain further. So
well, it's not true. In Tendermint, you have the problem is called double signing. I think there is a link I have provided. They have exactly the same issue. The reason why is that before validating a block, you are not sure everybody on the chain has the same view. So, for instance, you send a block, one block to some delegates, And if you have several forgers, forger could sign one block and the other forger could sign another block. And in the end, you have 2/3 on each part. You can limit, but you can have more than 3/3 signature flying around. It's called double signing. It's really well documented as well on Tendermint.
Okay, I mean that is something we could improve. So I was talking about the initial proposal.
I'm not saying it's a wrong idea. It does not prevent double forging or double signing.
Okay.
The thing which is good is that we can announce, and the point we have the design that has been made in ARK, which is improvable. They announce the way why they are announcing the block is that because they don't have deterministic list of forger.
We have it
more like they have a forger and they have let's say I don't remember how they call that. They have more probability to forge basically. And when they announce the block, is that everybody agrees that you have the highest probability to forge. The thing is that on ARK we have a deterministic list, so maybe it's not perfect, but still I think it prevents one of the reasons why they announce the block. On the other hand, the thing is that in ARK, we want to be sure to tick every 8 seconds. And to tick every 8 seconds, there is a way to trick the network to announce that, is that we have to forge in the we have to request to the network if we can forge in the 4 seconds. It's basically oneself that I'm going to forge, and please tell me if I have the right to forge or not. Obviously, it's not a consensus. It's practical. It's not at the level of the consensus. So it's mechanically improving the way the blocks are created and circulated, but it's far from a consensus level. So the idea is to announce at the consensus level to be able to have announce that quick enough, let's say quick enough. And then after having a maximum number of delegates countersigning this is interesting because it's a push at the level of consensus, the mechanic of the exchanging blocks and everything. However, Abdot is very, I mean, you have a lot more signature flying around. Let's say 51, because basically everybody will sign. So even you need only 2/3. Everybody will sign, so you will have 51 signature for each block. So the size of the block will be quite increased because you have signature plus public key signing. So you have a payload. So we have to test, but in the end, TPS will decrease. I don't know how much, but it will decrease. So we have to find a way to find out what's the best solution. That's just what
I wanted to bring something up. It's not related to the double forging, but it's something that you mentioned. So you said that the next forger is deterministically known in the ARK system. Do you think that's a good thing? Because what I can think of is with just simple network analysis, I can find out who runs which forger and I can just DDoS them. So how do you protect against that in the long term when the network becomes quite big?
Yeah, this is one weakness, is that, for instance, a forger can just don't have a full node and deterministically know exactly when he will be forging. So he just waits the time he will be forging, and then wake up, pull the last block and forge an empty block, and that's it, and it's still okay. So obviously it's not what we want, and so the idea is that each round, the seed to determine the list should take the last block, for instance, the last block of the previous one, which is not the case yet. And I think this is something we should maybe include, is that the way we calculate the lists at the beginning of the round should include some kind of pseudo-random number, so we don't know the round after what would be the list, the order of the delegates.
Okay, so that's something I tried to address in the AIP 25, in which basically it's kind of random. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. That's exactly that, yes. But the thing is that I think we have put it on some kind of medium priority track in front, but I think it should be done as well as replay attack protection with the norms, incremental norms for transaction. I think they are both simple things to implement, and that can be done for the next hard fork, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Kristjan?
Yeah, Fix, you can check the last link in the chat.
Yeah.
Just check it. It's actually some kind of state tracking to prevent double sign protection. We can further on, but I will still. I think we can still move forward with combining best practices from, let's say, Tendermint and putting them on ARK. So I guess this calls for a new AIP or AIPs that would define this further, because we're also getting WebSockets further down the line in the 2.4 release. We'll have smaller payloads, so a lot of things are going in our direction. So I think we can keep the transaction per seconds. I still do. I'm optimistic.
I think we need to. It's difficult to estimate the.
Yeah, we'll see with the testing actually.
Gain or the loss testing on testnet and try to push further, to push maximum and see the difference. Even a local testnet could do, I think, because with 2 nodes or 3 nodes, and try to see when you switch to bigger block or whatever, or several process within block time, like pre-committing whatever, and see how we can reach what the TPS we can reach. But it's difficult for me, even for me, to see if we have a gain or a loss.
So for the rolling checkpoint, I don't see what problem that solves, and I'm worried that if you implement it, a Sybil attack might end up being worse because of it. Because a Sybil attack could just ignore the existing checkpoint.
Okay, you're looking at the proposed issue for the rolling checkpoint.
Obviously, if we do Tendermint, it shouldn't really be needed, but I assume that that's in case we don't go with Tendermint. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're correct. That was these tasks were actually planned before we looked Tendermint a bit higher, but with Tendermint we're gonna get some kind of init state and checkpoints essentially by multiple signed blocks. So this rolling checkpoint will then has to be reassessed, I guess. But this is further down the line. I think this is 2.8 or something. So a lot of things will change in between, as usual.
On the topic of Sybil attacks, I contacted Kristjan. So there is something I'm working on. I will release it as an AIP a bit later on. But basically, the idea is that we add just like 0.1 second of proof of work every time a relay wants to like use the tell other peers about something, or basically any user that's trying to use the network. Every time they make a request, the relay has to do 0.1 second of proof of work and signs the message with that. We can easily reduce the or increase the cost that it would take to successfully Sybil attack the network, and we can reduce its effect quite significantly via that.
Regarding Sybil attack, did you check the link I shared with you? We had
I did check it.
It's a bigger PR that was done actually by Vasil. Vasil is here. Maybe he can explain a bit, but it's not mitigating Sybil attacks, but essentially it's making them a lot harder, you know, by verifying the chain and seeing which peers are on our chain and which are not, and the peers that are not on our chain are actually getting rejected. Vidi, are you here?
Where's the link for this?
So this was sent to me in a private message. Maybe you can also post it here for the others.
Yeah,
but basically what I understood from it was when I looked at this would work for example, if somebody was just spamming relays, but if it was a serious attacker and they wanted to change the code, they could just provide us with fake data for the block height and the block hashes and still give us the wrong transactions. So in that case, it wouldn't work.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well, because you know, we have a private implementation, and if someone wanted to simply write a small proxy that just proxies certain data but not others, it would be pretty easy to break that.
Yeah, but on this level also blocks are validated, so essentially you could not push in other transactions because the whole signature part and the validation is done based on the peers you pull up. You can proxy them, but if you proxy them, you would have to proxy them in the same way, so they're actually valid, and if they're not valid, they would be detected.
So what is it that this tries to solve?
It tries to make a Sybil attack harder, but not to solve it completely. I'm just looking for the PR. Give me.
The other concern I had is, correct me if I'm wrong, but normal clients don't verify anything, right?
No. What do you mean don't verify anything? Don't verify what?
Like the wallets, they don't
verify the peer. The peers. Yeah, not yet. Yeah, it's true.
Actually, the strategy to prevent being spoofed by like is to a node. So and round robin, so basically mitigating the possibility to spoof a like client, but it's far from perfect for sure.
Yeah, I just shared the link regarding that PR. I'm just pinging because I see that Vasil is here, but he's not replying. Maybe he can add more information about it.
But if you don't have a full node on a live client, it's difficult to detect a Sybil attack. So the only thing you can maybe find out is the network is messed up. You could be able to find out and say, oh, look, the network is experiencing difficulties. Take with a pinch of salt what the data you are looking at. There was the idea as well is that there was an idea I remember, but I think we have not gone further. Is that when you launch a desktop wallet, underneath you try to spawn a simple node with SQLite, everything light, so you don't have to install anything, and they have a full node that is regularly trying to sync to the network, and this node can detect as well better forks or
I have a small idea that could help desktop wallets. I just thought of it, so it might be a bad idea. So this is assuming we implement Tendermint.
Yeah.
Because in Tendermint we already have the 2/3 consensus in the last block.
Okay.
Okay, so this wouldn't stop long-range attacks, but this would technically prevent Sybil or malicious spoofing. If the wallets just grab the last block, they could at least verify that they're on the right height, because the last block would have the 2/3 signatures already in.
Yeah.
So this would at least let wallets. Yeah, I can hear you.
It's better now.
This would at least let wallets know that they're looking at the right chain, I guess.
Because if you want to try to spoof that, you create a block, you create 51 key, whatever key, and you sign this block with whatever key, and you present to live clients how how this light cannon would see that these 2/3, I mean, these signatures are not good.
Right, they would have to know that the delegates are correct.
Yes.
There's no, yeah, okay. So then if you Sybil, you could probably just spoof that as well. So it just makes, I guess it just makes it a little bit harder. It doesn't really solve it.
Yeah. But I think it's good because having already some solutions that make it harder is for now is enough. So any solutions like that could be good. Above all, this is easy to implement.
Hello.
Okay, Vidi, hi. We can hear you now.
Yeah, I had problems with, I don't know, I had to leave and rejoin.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
So let me summarize the problem that this peer verifier is solving. Is this, we calculate the quorum, and every peer checks every other peer what is his height and block ID. And depending on this data, every peer or every node calculates the quorum. And depending on this quorum, it may decide to fork or to forge or something that may be bad for the network if it has been manipulated. So it turned out at some point, like, I don't know, a few months ago, that you could start many number of nodes that just pretend, hey, I'm at height something, at block ID something, even if this something is complete nonsense. So you could start 1,000 nodes that pretend are at block 10 billion and block ID something ABC 1, 2, 3, it doesn't matter at all. And then you would fuck up the quorum of everybody. Do you understand? This was the problem.
Yeah, isn't this what happened on DevNet after the whole Pokey chain incident? Because that chain was no longer valid?
Mm-hmm.
So this was, first you could stop the network like this, and then it was really easy to do because you just start many nodes. This is not, this is trivial and very easy to do. And at the same time, this could be, how to say, you can catch this attack very easily because the data that those fake nodes pretend to have, we can try to verify it. Like, he says that he's at height 10 billion and some block ID, we can ask him to show us his blocks. And these blocks, all of them should be signed by the delegates.
But what if it's really far in the future and the delegate set has changed? You would have no way to verify it without asking for all the blocks up to there.
We ask, so if he pretends to be at higher height than us, we would ask him for 50, I think 51 blocks from our height, not all of them. But if this is a attack, then for sure, even the first block he would not be able to deliver, or to, how to say, to show valid block.
Right, so the other thing is, if they pretend to be at a much higher height, can't you just tell them to fuck off because you'll know that they're too far ahead in the future? You can just invalidate it based on the time.
I don't know.
So, like, if they just say they're even, let's say, 5 blocks ahead, you could just check your system time and check the slot time, and if it's too far in the future, you don't even need to consider it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the thing is that the slot can make you sure that you can't have a block at this height within this slot because it's not possible.
Although I think on ARK you can technically be 300 something thousand blocks ahead because of the mist, but I guess 10 million or something wouldn't be realistic.
Yes, and the thing is that with civil attack is much more complex because they could say, okay, this is my last block, and you want to verify that this guy is right, and you just poll, and you just can fake whatever block. If you want to pull like 500 block before and see if this is a legit chain, you will say, okay, look, I send you the block you want to hear. It's difficult with Sybil attack. You need always to be sure to get back the whole blockchain to be sure that everything is fine. So it's not easy. But so on the Sybil attack, I think we should think about using the strategy of range IP as used in other blockchain. That you can have like more like 4 peers within 256 range or whatever. So it prevents a number of IPs you should buy here and there to be able to configure a Sybil attack.
That is planned. I think it's in 2.8 or something. It's already defined. So.
And the thing is that it's not as easy as you may think, because it will slow down the propagation of block. So yeah, if you have lots of delegates or lots of nodes that are within the same range, they will not get the block right in the same time, because I mean you will have a limitation of peers you will be really connected to. So it could limit the propagation time of blocks.
Isn't this why Lisk switched to WebSockets? I know I see ARK is looking to switch to that, but WebSockets should be much faster just because I believe it's subscription based instead of waiting for requests.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the idea of WebSocket, is that you don't have the override of connection each time you want to send data or receive data from peers.
I think we'll be switching to WebSockets in 2.4. I guess testing will start after 2.3 is settled. So, but yeah, from the feedback I've got, maybe Erwin, you can share more information on the WebSockets and how's it going. What are your how did you notice maybe speed improvements and stuff? Maybe he fell asleep. Oh yes, okay. His mic is not working. Okay, yeah. But anyway, they look promising. So yeah.
Hey, I wanted to mention about this IP range. In order to use this, we would have to abandon the requirement that every node knows and talks with every other node. Yeah.
Okay, talking is not maybe outbound connection is not filtered. It's inbound connection.
I don't think you have to talk to every node. If I recall correctly, every Bitcoin node is only connected to 8 nodes. I'm pretty sure that's the cap, and that seems to work just fine.
But it works fine because it's a 10-minute block's time, so they have time to propagate the block around the block. I think we cannot afford having only. We can test again. This is only out of my mind, but heuristically, it would be better to test to be able to see if we have only 8 nodes connected on different IP range, whatever. What would be the cost for propagation time?
Yeah, you're right. I think for set block times, you might need a little more, but I think you could probably go with a lot less than the whole set.
Yes, absolutely.
Wouldn't reducing the number of connections also make it easier to do an Eclipse attack?
Hey, this is obvious.
Only if you can force them to take your peer. You have to find a way to actually make your peer the one they choose. Combined with a Sybil, technically, yeah, it would make Eclipse attacks easier.
Why?
Well, just because let's say you only pick 8 peers, if you spawn 1,000 nodes, there's just, if they're only picking 8, there's just a much higher chance that it will be your 8, and then you can manipulate them however you want. If none of the nodes that they select are real, then you can basically feed them any data or cut them off the network. But if you have the whole peer set, the chances of them. So I've done simulations on Eclipse attacks on the current network, it's much harder to do now, even with just having over 100 peers, because the curve is exponential for how many peers you need in order for a random request to bounce.
Okay.
And the countermeasure is to be able to randomly change peers you are connected to regularly.
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin actually had someone who demonstrated an Eclipse attack, I think it was a year or two ago, but they ended up solving it. I don't remember how, but there are ways to mitigate it and make it very, very difficult.
Yeah, I think there's a video on this. It wasn't that mentioned on some kind of conference. Can't remember who. Yeah. Okay. So, where are my slides? Actually, we are already at the last section. So, any other questions, comments? How do we see this further? I personally would like to join. Essentially, maybe first to really look more into Tendermint and how we're gonna include the best practices into the ARK consensus. I think it would add a lot of value in the long run. But an AIP should be proposed on this, of course. And based on this AIP, maybe we could have another discussion if the specs are okay for, let's say, on our side, and maybe what will be the input from the delegates and from the community. Or maybe one of the community members would like to jump on it and start writing an AIP. So this is essentially all open. But I think this is the way to go in the long run. So this is regarding the consensus topics we had, and also we're gonna get a bit more stability in with the pre-vote pre-commit steps. But yes, this should be done after, I don't know, 2.8 or after 3.0, where all the minor changes or the whole version will be out, meaning the whole roadmap will be closed. Any other suggestions from your side?
I would like to suggest that maybe next time the team submits an AIP, they first finish the pull request and then merge it, because otherwise I don't know like when it's supposed to be finished, and like none of us will be able to read it and provide our responses, like feedback on it.
Which one? Okay, I agree. I mean, the intention of the blog post was essentially to get feedback and to get critical feedback, which we got. So yeah, the pull request, I'm not sure about which pull request you were talking, but the rules for the AIPs is the best thing is to provide some kind of content. So either you do it on GitHub, like a discussion, like Deadlock Delegate did, where he opened an issue, and there was a whole discussion there. And out of that discussion, then you can decide if it's accepted by the community, and then we can write an AIP on top of it. So because AIP should be a bit more harder specification, how to do it, where to implement it. Essentially, the purpose of AIP is the community improvements that can be voted upon, and then these things gets decided what gets done or not. So, in short.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just pointing out that some of the AIPs that were merged into the master branch, for example, I remember AIP 31, there was one, which was, when it was merged, it was kind of incomplete. So I wasn't able to fully read all of it because there was chunks missing in there.
Yeah, I mean, for some parts of the code, if they are not so critical that they tear around or tear apart the consensus, there will be no AIPs written, because we do the specs we open an issue, we implement it. So if there are minor issues or minor stuff, there will be no AIPs. So AIP is for bigger changes where we need consensus between all of us. And so that's the true purpose, not for every smaller tasks and specifications. Hope I answered your question. Okay. Anything else, guys? Come on. It's Friday. It's evening here.
Well, actually, if we have questions, we have a next meeting next Thursday, right? Anyway.
We discussed for those of you who joined a bit later. So we discussed we do them monthly, but we can push them if there's some urgency. We can do them maybe 2 weeks. But I think most of us agreed that once a month would be good to talk about it. Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Yep. Okay. And if we get some critical discussion out of it, then we can schedule it in a week or so. I mean, it's not a problem anyway.
Yes. So next one is basically
plus 1 month.
So we agree now. Plus 1 month. It would be.
I think we can sync in Delegates discussion channel based on a few proposals, and okay, guys, it was really nice to hear some of your voices, not see you.
No cameras.
Yeah. So
I just want to bring something up, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure, Mike. Go ahead.
I mentioned in the discussion that's a possibility of having deterministic blocks.
Okay.
So that as long as all the delegates agree on all the transactions, that should be in there, and you can sort them in a specific order. Then every delegate should be able to calculate what should be in the block independently, and then they can just exchange the hashes of that block to confirm it. And as long as a majority of them match, then it gets added. So it seems like it cuts down a lot on the network traffic because you're not having to transmit a whole block to all the delegates, only the hash. Eliminate double forge problems because that way the block can only be one way and not any other, as long as they all agree on what transactions should be in it. So just a thought,
We had a similar situation when before we launched V2, where we thought that double forging was solved, essentially because all the transaction pools were the same, so all the double forge blocks were the same. So yeah, I haven't put much thought into this further on, but I guess it would add a bit more network traffic, or we would somehow some way had to have the same level of transaction pool, so each block would be the same.
Yeah, I like the idea, but I guess the biggest issue would be transaction withholding. As it is now, we know a lot of delegates self-forge their own transactions, so I don't know. I guess it's debatable whether or not that's a good thing. I'm sure some people would like to see that gone. I think it's an interesting idea, but I think it makes it a lot harder. Oh, sorry. I think it makes it a lot harder on the network.
As you said, Mike, it solves a lot of problems. Yeah, it's true. It makes the network a lot harder. That's true, but it also solves a lot of problems. But maybe let's see what Tendermint will bring. And I don't know, for a while while we were testing the network, especially when the V2 was spammed, there were some issues related to a lot of traffic. Maybe we can test how it behaves for a while and we see. I don't know, but it's I cannot say anything now before doing some testing and research.
I think for me, I believe that since forging costs nothing, the only way to prevent double forging is having only one process doing the forging, the forgery. If you have a process with several processes with a forging process, it doesn't work to me. So you need to have this only single process that is looking to whatever nodes or whatever to be able to forge, and so it knows itself that it has forged only one block. And if there is so that's the idea of KMS.
Okay. I think a harder problem with deterministic blocks isn't really double forging, it's just making sure the pools are the same. I feel like that's a separate issue that would be much harder to tackle just because of propagation, especially if, let's say, a transaction comes in, right before the block's about to be created, then You have it's essentially the same issue as double forging, where it's just network latency is causing pools to mismatch.
I agree.
We can actually solve that using the Avalanche pre-consensus protocol. Bitcoin Cash is trying to implement that, and they're almost done with their test nets. And from what I've seen from them so far, it works quite nicely.
That is the hardest part. Is making sure, everyone agrees on the transactions. Essentially, what I suggested a shared transaction pool is one way. So essentially, you're achieving consensus on the transaction pool before you forge the blocks, and then you create the blocks independently, and then you're agreeing on consensus that everyone, that block that's added is everyone agrees on it. But yeah, it's having that shared consensus on transactions and what should be in a block is the hard part.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, let's leave it at that for now. Maybe a topic, something to think about for the weekend. Anything else, guys?
I'm okay on my side.
Okay.
A great meeting. Thanks.
I'm okay, but real quick, just to address Mac, Avalanche doesn't seem to work very well in POS. It looks like it's targeted towards proof of work, unless I'm missing something.
What?
Avalanche is essentially just similar to what you mentioned. It's pre-consensus. It just signs the transactions and makes sure that no new transactions are included. For example, if a block comes in and it contains a new transaction, it will be considered invalid by the network.
Okay, maybe we can check it out and discuss it. If maybe it proves, maybe we find something useful also. So, I mean, I like to check different consensus, and I'm always thinking in the background how this will help our consensus, our protocol. So as we said, Tendermint, I think it will be the way to go. So we have to start digging maybe in the AIP also along all the other tasks we have. But yeah, so we'll be talking again in a month, more or less, plus minus a few days. So I guess we can somehow plan it like this. If there will be some new AIPs, and these AIPs will be presented in the community and accepted well, we can discuss them maybe during the meeting, and well, all other stuff that will come along, especially some kind of attack mitigations and how the Tendermint will work. I guess we'll have at least a few conceptual answers by then. Yeah, and everything else is open. I mean, anybody can suggest a topic we can discuss or an improvement. So I think the only way to move forward, and this is really important to me, is by to work like a collective where everybody pushes some ideas further, but then there comes another guy which tears it apart. But that's life. So you move forward to will improve based on that, and I guess the best solution will come out of it. So, yeah.
Sounds great.
Okay,
good.
Thanks, Kristjan.
Guys, thank you very much. Thanks for showing up.
Thanks.
And, yeah, I'll share the recording when it's done, so you can check it further on. So, yeah, thank you guys. Later.
Yes. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.